Hang on, I'll get out of this. Hey, hey. Okay, hi. For those of you watching, this is Michelle Weidenbender, your Chief Hope Builder. And today I have Danielle Bernock with me. Hello, Danielle.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Oh, well, it's so my pleasure. And I am in Florida right now. We're in the middle of a storm. So I'm going to hope that, we don't all of a sudden lose power or something, but that
I
can.
thought you were in Gatlinburg.
Oh yeah, no, I did. I went there for a few days, and then we were on our way south to Florida. And I really, we're here so I can keep writing the book with my mom tribe and just get some stuff done. It's just great sometimes to get away from where you normally are, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, but I have like over 1,600 moms in this group, this Moms Letting Go group, who often struggle with feeling guilty. And society, a lot of times throughout my journey with addiction in my family, I felt judged. And I felt like people were looking at me like, wow, you must have been this really bad parent, or you must really be an enabler or into codependency, or just all these things where people are judging me about why my son and daughter-in-law were addicted. And we lived in the same community. The moms here live in their communities. So like I have one mom whose son is homeless and just walks the streets, and he'll pop into her work, he'll pop in at home, and she'll make him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like, and so people in the community see this and they just look at you like, what did you do wrong?
Well,
And
people are judgmental across the board unless they work on not being.
yeah, and honestly, so I gave this speech a couple weeks ago, and I stood up in front of these people and I introduced them myself like as, okay, author, coach, all these accolades, right? And they were like, I'm sure in their heads thinking, wow, cool, right? And then I go over to this side of the room and I introduce myself as the mom of an addicted loved one who was into opioids and heroin. And I said, okay, now you just had two different opinions. Like, depending on our experiences, and I told them I was right there with you. Like, I used to think that people who did heroin were like in the gutters on the streets, laying next to dirty needles, and yeah, but there are some of those, but there are also many who live in these beautifully loving, healthy families. And it's just devastating. And so oftentimes we live in that shame. So anyway, that was really long-winded, but I'm not here to talk. I'm here to listen to Danielle, because Danielle, tell us about your books, because you serve in like this trauma spot and shame. And so tell moms a little bit about your books and how they can help them, first of all.
Okay, well, I have two paperback books and a Kindle book also and an audiobook. But the two primary ones are my personal story of getting free from childhood trauma and finding my value. And the second one, Because You Matter, which is back here, that is more of self-help, but it's memoir mixed in it because it's how to take ownership of your life, how to reclaim what belongs to you, really. And it's not just how to, but it's also contains stories of 10 other people who have been through 10 other kinds of trauma different than mine, because trauma is personal and it affects everyone differently. Everyone's circumstances are different. Having a child with an addiction has got to be traumatic. But then for some people, maybe it's not so traumatic. And that's where trauma is personal comes in. There's no even measuring of, are you traumatized enough, or are you traumatized too much? Or it's ridiculous, but that's where the judgment in humanity comes in and gets us in trouble. And the shame, I mean, there's so much shame out in culture now. It's like, I mean, they just look for a reason to shame you. And that's where we need to take ownership of our life. We have to really be in charge of what we are going to think, what we are going to believe, how we are going to feel. And it's not simple, but it's possible.
Yes.
It's a lot of work. And then you have this wonderful group. So you have this community. And when you're together with other people, it makes it easier because you have the support. And support is so important. So my books are two different ways. One is childhood trauma specifically. The other one is emotional trauma and childhood trauma. One is a story that has been called a page turner, and the other is more of a self-help kind of thing, broken down into little small pieces so you could go to just the parts you want and go to just what the chapter you want, because it's owning different parts of your life, your courage, your mess, your pain, your purpose, your value, your belovedness, all the different aspects of your life, so you can find what part of it speaks to you.
Wow. Those are some great topics where we all struggle with. And sometimes like we don't even realize that we've suffered trauma because we undermine it. You know, I think you and I have had that conversation before, but it's not until we really do some internal dissection of how we feel about things that we realize, oh, that is getting in the way. And what was helpful to me in my situation was eventually when Ryan got into recovery, I was able to sit down with him and say, what was your childhood like? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And where did you get stuck? And what was really freeing was when he said, Mom, please, this had nothing to do with you. I had a great childhood. And I don't know if he was telling the truth, but made me feel good in a
He
moment.
may have been, from his perspective, there may be something he's not aware of. One of the things about trauma and why people don't own it is shame, fear, but there's also the invisible wound of childhood emotional neglect that leaves behind a vacuum. So it doesn't leave behind something you see, like a bruise, or you feel like emotional pain. You have emptiness, you're missing things that you don't know that you're supposed to have. And then I just learned about a new psychologist, Rihanna Milne, and she called it unconscious trauma, which I was delighted to discover her, because I call it hidden trauma, because we dismiss it and just diminish it because we compare it to other things, or it happened just once and so it's not a big deal. So we come up with all these reasons why it's not a big deal, or society says it's not a big deal. Or if you are in a family with very strong stoic people, they could say, just get over that. There are so many reasons. And the only way to get to the bottom of it is to do the inner work. And that takes courage, that takes work, that takes boldness, but it is so worth it.
So I know we didn't plan on this, but can you explain like how to do the inner work? Is there a process for that? And
well, I have a process I use in my coaching and in my course that I have, Heal Your Childhood Self. And it's it's the acronym SELF. And it stands for see, expose, love, and free. Because seeing is just being aware. It's awareness, kind of a superficial looking at things. And what I wanted to say about how we had brought today about healing your guilty self is like, to apply it to that would be see the effect that the guilt is having on your life. Because you're feeling guilty, what is that doing to you? Are you not sleeping? Are you getting sick? Are you not eating? How is that presenting itself? Just an observation. I was going to say get pen and paper.
Oh,
it didn't go that way. But then the expose is to look underneath that.
Hey, hang on just a second, because I want to talk about C for our moms, because this is where I'm always saying, hi Lucretia, if if they if if they're enabling, like if they keep giving money, if they keep giving their addicted loved ones the safety net, at least for me, guilt and pity would sometimes be underlying. That would be like, if we can see, I'll often ask moms like, what what is it that gets in your way? Why do you think you need to do this rescuing all the time? Does it make you feel better, or are you because what harm is that causing? Well, it doesn't cause harm per se, but it isn't healthy in that it doesn't help the child, the adult child, take responsibility for their actions. So I love, self is, we're talking about an acronym right now, and S is this, stands for C. And so, just kind of seeing where that is, where your trauma or your guilt, where is that coming from? So
Not where is it coming from? What is it doing? The
okay,
seeing is what are you doing because of it?
right, okay,
If you feel guilty, and so because you feel guilty, you do fill in the blank.
okay,
That's what the C is. The expose is to look underneath that, to expose the truth of, why do you feel guilty? Do you feel shame? Or do you feel guilt, or is it real guilt, or is it false guilt? Are you taking it upon yourself simply because you're the parent that, of course, I'm guilty? Well, that's false guilt. But if there is a real cause, then that's what you need. That's what exposes the cause. What is causing that guilt? And does that cause have any truth in it, or is it a lie? Because there are things that we do, because childhood emotional neglect, I never heard the term when my counselor helped me identify it in my life. And we can suffer things like we just said a little bit ago about unconscious things that we don't even know. And so things can take place that they're invisible to us. So we have to shine the light on them. And that's where people get scared of looking at that, exposing that. Oh my goodness, if I did something wrong. And then it's like their emotions and the self-condemnation just like skip to the firing squad, like it's the end of the world. But that's why we break it down into the 4 different steps, because you simply expose that. And that's when you move into the love thing, to love that out of you too, because you remove that, you address that, you don't leave it there, you don't stay in that place. And that's
kind of lean into it. You lean into it and expose it, right? Where you're kind of you do a mental dissection. Here's what it is, and I'm going to, not embrace it, but realize that it's there. So, do you recommend that they write out these 4 things in a journal type of way?
That would be helpful. I mean, journaling is always good because you'll find things in you didn't know were there. It's like, even like when we get on here live, which is why I do lives myself all the time, is things come out of my mouth that go, I was not planning on saying that. And that happens when you're writing, because what's in you will come out. And that's what you want to do, is you want to unpack it. You need to get it out of you, because it hides in there in the dark under all the excuses and under the shame and under the feelings. And you have to peel it back. You have to bring it out into the light. And that's why the very next step is love, because you have to love the humans involved. If you had no part to play in your child's, it was just a choice, then you have to love yourself enough to not blame yourself and own the truth that you're not at fault, which can be just as hard as the other side, because you don't want to blame the child, because then in your heart you villainize. You turn your child into a villain. It's like, no, they made a mistake, they did something wrong, and then forgive and you love. Then there's process after that, which takes to the F, which is you take the action, which brings the freedom out of that. So it's a walk through that process.
So when you say the action, does that mean just stopping where you're at and mentally going through? Is the action a mental thing, or is there something physical that they can do too?
Well, to start with, it's dealing with your own soul. because out of the abundance of the heart, your mouth speaks. What you think and what you feel will come out in your actions. And so it's like you plant a garden inside of you of what you want to come out of you.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to make not a hashtag, but a meme. Yeah. See, the creatures agreeing. So wait, you create a garden inside
Plant.
you. You
You
plant.
plant a garden inside of you
Okay.
so that it can come out of you. I don't remember exactly how I said it.
That's okay. We'll embellish it later.
It can grow out of
what
you.
you want to come out
Oh.
of you. You plant a
It
garden
grows out
inside
of
of you of what you want to come out of you. It's
Okay.
intentional. It's like
Oh.
you don't plant dandelions in your lawn and say, I want tomatoes. You know, you plant tomatoes in the garden and you plant tulips over here, and it's very intentional. And so we can only control our own lives. We can't control anyone else's life. We get one life and we can only own our own. Nobody else anywhere on the planet.
Darn it.
And
Darn
so
it. I'm trying to manipulate my husband.
that's where we plant, and we need to learn, we need to grow. It's like, well, I don't know the answer to that. Well, then we go and find out. We don't stop there and go, I don't know what to do, which is a tendency, we freeze.
Yeah.
And that's when we go through the thing, okay, see, I'm responding like this, expose, why am I responding like this? I'll love myself into, let's move out of this, what can I do? And then you would free yourself by looking for the solution. So it's a constant repetitive going through the process.
I love that. We used to study like the fight and flight or freeze thing, but when you might not, I think you know what I mean, but I don't know if moms know what I mean. So when we get like that anxiety or we get full of fear, you know, some people just freeze and some people fly. I like your idea where we're just going to free ourselves. So anyway, that's just a play on words here. So what about how does forgiveness intertwine in this when maybe it's in the love part where
Yes.
we forgive ourselves because sometimes like moms in our group do have guilt because maybe they weren't there for their children when their children suffered with trauma. I once heard somebody say there's trauma from the actual trauma, but there's also extreme trauma when nobody's there to listen to them. And so that's like you were talking about earlier when there's almost like not an abandonment, but like a detachment. I don't know. What did you call that? Where
You disassociate?
yeah, well, like you just feel like there was nobody there to communicate it with. So you've kind of buried it. But
well, you're alone in the pain. Gabor Mate says that it's not the pain that traumatizes the child, it's that the child is alone in the pain.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love Gabor. Yeah. Okay. Yes. And so is it in the love section that you learn how to forgive yourself, or is that another like chapter in your book?
It's in the L, but you go through it over and over again. It's not just one and done. It's like the different chapters, like the one thing in my notes is one of the chapters is called Owning Your Mess. And inside that chapter is a subsection called Own Your Dysfunction. Every family has dysfunction. And in there, I talk about, there was a song that really helped me own that in my life. It was a song by Kelly Clarkson called Because of You. And I talk about it again in another chapter and go into it in great depth because sometimes, you know, you do it one layer at a time. So you go deeper each time. It's not one and done. But in her song, you know, she was speaking about and blaming the person who had done things to her that created all her fear in her and that. And it was eye-opening to me that someone else could be to blame because I blamed myself as a child because that's what children do. And I believe that the tendency for moms is they would be just like that. They would be, of course, I'm the mom, that they would just defer to that in the same kind of way. And so it's like we have to take that blame off of where it does not belong and put it where it goes.
Right.
You know, her song says, because of you, I couldn't do this because of you. I couldn't do this. And I saw it was because of this. It was because of that situation. You know, this person did that. But a real danger in that is you have to go through the process, because that's not the end of the process. It's so important to identify the blame as a starting point. It's a location. It's like, this is what happened. And then after that, you take your attention off of that place and you move into healing. You know, it's like, okay, so this person did this thing and it caused this. It's because there was a cause and there was an effect. So this thing happened that caused the situation, but it brought about the effect. And so you don't focus on the cause, you focus on the effect. It's like if you fell down and hurt yourself, you don't focus on why did I do that? How did I do that? Who did that and everything? You got to focus on the healing. That you really have to focus on the healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Like one of the things I say in the book is healing comes into view when blame transforms into cause instead of judgment.
Okay, so let's take for instance. So let's say a lot of moms say, I feel like I caused this because I left their father, I divorced their father when they were younger, and it split up the family. Let's just take that as an example. So the cause, the person feels guilty. Well, maybe you could break that down into how a person could think that through with your cause and then the no judgment.
Right. I have a term that I coined in my first book, Emerging with Wings, that I talk about again in this book. And it's no malice, and then the not equal sign. No malice does not equal no harm. And what I write in here, I wanted to read just this little part. As a child growing up, I looked at certain other children and wished for their lives, sometimes wishing I were them. They seemed to have it all together while I felt so inferior. After addressing the trauma and dysfunction in my life, I understand how wrong my perception was. No one has a perfect childhood. Granted, not all children suffer trauma, and there are those with less dysfunction than others. But because we're all human, we can never be rid of dysfunction. People make mistakes, and we hurt one another by accident. Remember the section, no malice does not equal no harm. Like there's a section in here on that also about how with the childhood emotional neglect, there's a book by Dr. Janice Webb called Running on Empty. And she goes through 12 different styles of parenting that can cause dysfunction in a child because they're emotionally neglected. And my life fell into multiple of those categories. And one of them was well-meaning parents that were emotionally neglected themselves. Well, if I don't know how to make pierogies, I can't teach you how to make pierogies. If I don't know how to take care of myself emotionally, I can't teach you how to take care of yourself emotionally. There's no malice in that. There's no intent in that.
Right.
But it can cause the effect of harm because a child is left without a skill that they needed. And so there's no condemnation for that. There's moving forward from that. There's like, oh, that's a skill that you need to have. And how can you like work on how can I put that in my life? How can I help my child build that in their life? Because it's a skill that they lack.
Oh my gosh. This is so powerful to me because, you know, we're in the process of our granddaughters reunifying with their parents. And the 11-year-old just says, Mimi, I just feel so sad when I'm over there, but she can't articulate what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, her mom's mom had 7 kids, and I know that there was emotional neglect with the children because there was some sickness there, right? And the kids were left alone quite a bit. So they didn't have
the nurturing that was needed.
Right. Well, okay. They didn't have the nurturing that I give my kids, or I have given the youngest. And so, you know, I love your analogy of like, they can't make they can't make something. They can't teach you how to make something if they've never made it. They don't know how.
Mhm.
And I love that because it removes the guilt, because my daughter-in-law always used to feel intimidated by me. And I didn't understand it. But I think, her experience in her family was this emotional disconnect. And I was one of those who would, when she would tell me stories, I would just stop and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Nobody was there for you." And I would give her a hug and she would just bawl. She would just
Mhm.
cry. And I used to
Yeah.
think, oh my gosh, how could your family not be there for you? So now, like with the youngest, and it's not because I'm trying to be something her mother isn't, it's just who I am, right? And
Right.
so I bring to the picture this, I can tend to be a little too tender and too nurturing. But I think I fill that void when she's home, because she's a very sensitive child. So she's
Mhm.
more in tune to that, needing that emotional support. But anyway, it was just an observation. So, oh my gosh.
Oh,
Go
yes. In my
on.
healing process, when I was in counseling and writing my first book, I remember I would constantly go through situations when I would just become a basket case. And it was when I was observing a father and a child, and they would be having this wonderful connection, and I would just lose it. I couldn't deal. And I talked to my counselor, had to work me through that of how to do that, is because I was so jealous that I never had that. And I craved that so badly, so
Yeah.
intensely. And I had to do something called mourn the childhood that I never had. I had to mourn the relationship I never had. I had to grieve it like it was a death. I had to treat it like it was a death. It's nothing I could have. My dad had already died. I mean, he died when I barely turned 14. I'd been 14 for a month. And,
Oh
I didn't,
my
it was like a
gosh.
mirage before then, and then he was gone. So it was like double abandonment there, emotional abandonment and then physical because he died. But it was, the without fault kind, because he had a heart attack and died, but I was there watching it also, which that was traumatic on top of that. but
Wow.
just creates those things because we desire those and they're missing so much. And through healing, I've been able to turn that around and celebrate when I see someone else have that. And it takes a lot of work to get there. I watch both of my children nurture my grandchildren in ways that I had no idea you could do that kind of thing. And it's like I sometimes would be in awe of like, wow, that's really amazing what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I told them, going through this healing, I improved on my parents' parenting, and they are improving on mine. And that's what we work toward that. That's what we try to do. No parent is perfect. No one's going to do a perfect job because people are broken. Our world is broken. All we can do is the best. And if we communicate with our kids, I'm a believer. I pray. I leaned into the grace of God. And I think all the awesomeness in my life is because of the grace of God. Both my kids' middle names mean grace. I mean, I pushed into grace and like, God, if you don't show up, we're all going to die kind of thing is how I felt. But, he kind of arranged my marriage and gave me both my kids' names before I had them because we weren't going to have kids. So that's a whole nother story that's in my first book. But yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I didn't trust myself. I was terrified. All I'm going to do is mess them up.
So something else, like, oh my gosh, you're just like stirring all these thoughts and emotions in my mind. Our oldest granddaughter would watch me tuck the younger one in bed. And one night I always then would go into her room and give her a hug if she wanted one. And she was crying. She said, "Nobody ever tucked me in like that every night. Do you know how many times I had to cry myself to sleep?" And I just said, "I'm so sorry. Do you want me to hold you now?" And so even though she was just about as big as me, I went into the room, I sat on her bed and she let me just put her in my lap, right? And I just held her. But so for many of the moms watching this right now, one of their worries and valid, is that their addicted children have children and they are emotionally checked out. Mom and dad are emotionally checked out. So their grandchildren are struggling, they're so worried that their grandchildren are going to be, traumatized from the emotional neglect and other things, right? So what, and maybe this is a loaded question for you, but what can you recommend? One more thing that ties into this. So we study these genotypes, like everybody else, so many people, like addiction is hereditary, right? But part of that is that, just like you said, family dysfunctions will continue from generation to generation. So how much is this like hereditary, and how much it just comes from the genotype of having the dysfunction from generations to generation? Until you do the work like you've done and like you're showing us, these families are going to continue to be for the cycles just to continue. And so what words of wisdom can you give moms of who have addicted children but grandchildren? Like, what can they do for their grandchildren?
Well, the biggest thing they can do is something. I know that sounds really super simple, and it's just the place to start. I know that over this last year during this pandemic, there's been trauma unleashed in this world like we haven't seen in a long time. And there are those that are seeking help and being proactive and doing things to counter that. And there are those that are not. There are those that are getting counseling. I have a foster grandson. We're in the process of adopting. My son and his wife are in the process of adopting. Well, he comes from trauma and he's been through trauma counseling. So there are those that grow up that way and don't get counseling. He's gotten counseling. There are other ones that, they know that this is a hard time. And so like you had your granddaughter on your lap. Well, that doesn't fix everything, but that is actually pretty huge because you validated it and you loved her. She was seen, she was known, and she was loved. It's not magical, but it is powerful. And so it's doing something, it's recognizing, seeing the kid, recognizing what they're going through, having conversation with them, letting them have their feelings and caring about that and finding out what do they need, because every kid's different. One might be oblivious to what's going on and another one might be completely devastated. And so it's what does that child need, and for them to get whatever help they need, whether they need counseling or they need, a hug, or they need a puppy, or they need certain books that they read, or they need to color, or they need music, whatever therapy, they need some sort of therapy for their soul that will bring them through that will cause their heart to not allow the trauma to get really deep roots. Like I interviewed someone just last week, Belinda Perez McDaniel. She was a child of missionaries, and they moved to Guatemala when she was 12. And they ended up going into El Salvador, and it was during the Civil War, during the earthquake and all that. And they were held at gunpoint against their will. They were hiding in a theater and all kinds of horrendous things. But something that Belinda told me that just astounded me, that gave her so much strength. I mean, she still had trauma she had to deal with later that she had dismissed herself because of a strength that she was given. As her mom sat with her right there on the side of the road while they're being held at gunpoint by soldiers and says to her, "You are stronger. You can do this. You will face things harder than this in your life." And she spoke strength and courage into the child's heart. And when this was over, she saw her trauma as they were just stories. But that's how her child heart was able to protect her from it as a child, turning it into stories. And then as an adult, she did have to address it. She got PTSD because it's, our bodies respond. And so doing something, speaking strength, speaking love, being there. They are not alone in their pain.
Right. Oh my goodness. I have to go back and listen to that. So where can moms listen to your podcast?
It's called the Victorious Souls Podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify, Google. I don't know. You can probably Google it and find out where it's at. It's all over the place.
So the Victorious Souls podcast, and they can find your books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Where can they go for your books?
Because You Matter is available at Barnes and Noble. They're both available at Barnes and Noble, but Because You Matter is also available in audio. Both are available in Kindle and paperback, and you can get them on Amazon or wherever you go shopping for books.
Okay. And Emerging with Wings.
You can get that at Amazon. You can order it at Barnes and Noble also.
Okay. Wow. So do you have anything else you want to add before I ask? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to, in the second part, I wanted to talk about the chapter called Owning Your Process. And there's a part that talks about owning your validation and owning your healing. It starts with owning the dysfunction, then owning the validation, then owning your healing, because you have to validate what's going on, the truth. And you focus on healing the wound, but healing isn't going to erase the memories. So don't think that, oh, I'll go through this and you won't. No. What it will do is it will take the power away from those memories from hurting you. You will remember, but they won't be running your life anymore. So you need to take ownership of that process of healing. And even as there was the because, the situation that you're in, you can build a new because, like the one that I discovered one morning in my prayer time. I was reading a certain scripture that's in Jeremiah about just blessing and all of that. That's in the book also. And as I read that and I saw all the healing that I had been through, and out of my own mouth, I heard like a prayer to the Lord of like, wow, I have this because of you. And so to create a new because of you, that if we will lean into the spirit of grace, the creator of our soul, the lover of our soul, because of him, we can have the healing and the freedom that he desires for us. We lean into a new because. We start with the one and we go into another one.
Powerful. Powerful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Wow. Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, the way you talk about it is like, it sounds simple, but we get so stuck because it's so emotional. And I think it's really important. Like, even when I was taking the girls to the trauma therapist, she explained to me that the way they're remembering their trauma right now is we're dealing with that and we're coping with that, right? So they had to, like you said, they had to write about it, they had to draw about it, and then they had to, show Dave and I like all the pictures and go through their story again. But what was interesting was here am I'm like, okay, good, we're all done. No, because some of that trauma is still buried, that something later in life can trigger that they aren't even remembering now. And I thought that was really powerful. And I think you talked about that too, is, it's because of this, and then you go through it and you heal from that. But then there's different layers, and it can continue. But I think
you need to reprogram. Your brain needs to be reprogrammed. Our brain is a supercomputer. You had mentioned about the generational thing, and I didn't speak to that. And I just remembered that about the generational thing and how science is still learning. So I love science, but I also know that science changes all the time because they're always learning something just like we are. So there was a time when they said that trauma was nothing, and it was just like war that had that. And it, you know, it was all in your head, and it's psychosomatic and all. And now they came to, they know that it changes the brain, and then you were stuck with it. It changes your brain, and you're stuck with that. And oh my goodness, it's for the rest of your life.
Really?
Now they know that you can do neuroplasticity to change your brain and rewire your brain to heal it back to the way it was designed. But none of those happen in an instant. Those are all a process. Yes, trauma does change the brain, but the brain can be healed. But it's not magic. It takes work. It has to be reprogrammed. It has to be rewired. You know, there's all different therapies out there. I am not a therapist, but I know what has worked for me. And so I love to help people. If anyone wants someone to come alongside them with it, just so they're not alone, I do coaching for that also.
Awesome.
But I am not a licensed counselor.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Well, we were studying Dr. Caroline Leaf in our tribe group because she does some neuroplasticity in her books and cleaning
She
up.
talks about epigenetics too.
Yeah, cleaning up your mental mess and
Right.
all that, right? But so I presented it like in our support group with a PowerPoint presentation, and it was like so over. It's not that it's over our top, but over our
There's a lot to it.
there is. There's so many moving parts. There's so many components. And so I took a couple different sessions to look into it. And it was just like this much of her book. But isn't that like, it's really empowering moms. Our addicted children, their brains can heal.
Yeah.
They can, but it's just going to take time with neuroplasticity and some of the things that, they're learning. I just want them to learn more faster. It's like, come on already. There's way too much of this, right? But thank you also for mentioning that you work with moms. And so moms, I will share Danielle's information here too. So if you want to reach out to her, you can. Is it okay if I unmute Lucretia? We have Lucretia on the call and see if maybe she has any questions, but also Lucretia's been a part of your coaching efforts too. So I know she totally values you for a lot of different reasons. So let's see if she can unmute. There she is. Hi, Lucretia.
Hi. Sorry I was late on the call, but I had to get my grandson down for nap, and apologize also for all of the moving around. Then my phone was going down and I had to plug in, and oh my gosh. Then the FedEx guy came to the door.
You showed up.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah.
But thank you, Danielle, for responding to me and helping me. And I think I answered you back. I filled in the blanks. So thank you for sending that to me. I hope you got what you wanted from me. If not, let me know and I'll give you some more.
Okay, I haven't seen it, so.
Well, you sent me that email and just said, fill in the blanks. You might be able to do better on this if you just fill in the blanks. And so I did, and I sent it back to you.
And so what we're talking about is a testimonial of how Danielle was able to help Lucretia. So just for those who are listening and don't maybe know what that was about, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She led me through just a time in my childhood. We just sort of focused on my childhood. And there was a traumatic, I didn't think that it was that traumatic, but after I got to thinking about it and going back, and how she says sometimes we just repress, those things, and it comes out and you go, wow, that really had something to do with how I am now, in my childhood. And so I wrote it all out. And as you're writing it out and as you're journaling, you God just brings more things to the forefront, and just work through that. And I thought I'd gotten over it. I think I did, and got through it, but it brought more healing, from that. So it was very, very good. Very good.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's like we think we get over things, but if we find it's still affecting us now,
yeah,
then we didn't. It's still affecting us now. Not we remember. I mean, remembering is completely different from it's affecting me now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it was, I mean, everybody did. They rode the bus to school. We lived sort of out in the country and we rode the bus to school, but there were some mean girls on the bus. But not only did I have to ride the bus with them in elementary school, but in junior high also, and until I got a car, so these girls were mean to me, and they made fun of me, of the way I dressed and of my hair. It's all about the hair. I'm going back again in 2 days to get some more cut off, but because it's summertime and it's hot. But when I was in first grade, my mother cut my hair. I could sit on it. It was so long that I could sit on it. And everybody had long hair then, right? But she cut it. I mean, short, short. And back then, I mean, she worked in the office and she had the beehive. Well, she wanted to put this on this little girl. And I mean, I would take a hat, I would bury a hat in my books or whatever, and I'd get on the bus and put a hat on, or I would get to school and go to the bathroom immediately and redo my hair. Okay. And that was a little traumatic to me,
Yeah,
year after
I
year.
can hear it.
Yeah. And these girls making fun of me. Well,
Well,
I eventually made friends
adds
with
to
one
it.
of
That's
them.
like 2 layers.
Yeah.
That's 2 layers there. That's what your mother did to you, not intending to traumatize you, but you're
No.
hiding in the bathroom because you're ashamed of how you look. You're afraid
Right.
of how you're going to be taught. So you have that going
Mhm.
on. And
Yeah.
then you have what they did to you. So that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
two-step
But I
process
made
of being
friends. I
messed
made
up.
friends with one of the girls, and she no longer made fun of me. And and as I aged, I learned how to, I mean, I had some coping skills early on, and I learned how to make friends with them and to compliment them, and to be nice to them. And then they weren't so mean to me. And
How do
then
you think
I
you learned?
learned,
Where do you think you learned those skills though? Who in your life were you modeling after, or was there anybody?
well, both of my grandmothers were very kind to me.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time with them. And they taught me prayers, and we prayed to God, and I think that's where most of that came from. And but my mom, she was just trying to be easy because I was so tender-headed, and she hated to comb out my hair every morning because she was in a hurry to get to work. So she just whacked it off. So, I told both of my girls, I said, you can paint your hair green and purple. I don't care. Whatever you want to do with your hair, it's fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I was getting a call.
Well,
I was getting a call in.
You guys are making me think of.
So
You're
anyway, I
making me
worked
think
through
of
that.
trauma.
I worked
Yeah.
through that. We're good. We're good now, So but there's always still that little inkling, oh, I need to change my hair. I need to do something to my hair, It's all about the hair.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in grade school, in gym class, they used to always pick teams, right? There was a captain, and
Yeah.
the captain would go pick who they wanted on their team. And I was always like one of the last ones picked. And so I think that's why now, even when I play sports, I'm so self-conscious. And I'll say, well, I'm
Yeah.
just not very athletic. And people say to me, what are you talking about? You sure are. And I'm like, I am. I still, even at my
Yeah.
old age,
Well, I
doubt
think you
that.
carry a part of that with you. And as Danielle was talking about, she was trying to be a better mother than her mother was. And then her daughters are trying to be better,
Yeah.
and so we just pass that down. And we do. And I'm just very laid back and a little bit calmer, with my children, and disciplining them and building them up, their self awareness and all of that. So yeah, we learn.
And Lucretia's had 7 children, so she's had a lot of experience doing that. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for being,
Oh, thank you for having me.
giving us time today, because, like I said, so many moms this can bring value to so many moms. And so I will share this in our YouTube and on the podcast. But before we go, Lucretia, did you have any questions for Danielle?
No, I don't think so at this at this point, of course, I missed the very beginning of it, but I would like for her to look at Joshua's interview
Okay.
and give us some feedback on that.
And what kind of feedback specifically? Would it be his trauma or just his healing? What would you like?
Just, I think the healing aspect of that, and if she can pick out anything else that he is saying, for her to help me in
Oh, okay.
supporting him,
Sure.
or anything else that maybe we need to pull out of that to support our moms,
Yeah.
because we've gotten a lot of reviews and a lot of good feedback, I think, on that, but you don't really want to ask for someone to criticize your
Right.
interview or to criticize what you've said or anything. But if Danielle can listen to that with an open mind, and I don't know, she might hear something that none of us did.
Sure. Yeah. I didn't
So,
think of that. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So last week I interviewed Lucretia's son, Joshua, who was in county jail and then transferred to prison for 2 years, and basically was penalized for having a substance use disorder. I'm sure that some of his actions were against the law, but he was one of those who I just get so angry because they try to punish the pain out of people, and prison is not the answer to addiction and substance use disorders and mental health disorders, but yet that's oftentimes where they end up. Well, Joshua is 3 years sober now, and by being in the group, Lucretia was able to say abstinence is not recovery. And so she said to him, you can't come home. You still have to recover from your substance use disorder. He's like, but wait, I haven't used in 3 years. And she's like, no, but it's abstinence isn't recovery. You haven't built the coping skills. So he had to take the bus to a place where he had never been before. And it's kind of like this interim house, right? And here's me, oh my gosh, is he going to go? Is he really going to do it? I don't know her son. Is he really going to do it? And he does. He does. And so he comes and he talks to us about his time in prison, about how moms can help their addicted children. Oh my gosh, just, and this is one of the ways I recommend that moms heal is go talk to recovering addicts you need answers to. But the one part, I'm so long-winded here again, but the one part, oh my gosh, Danielle, when he talked about how he had to man up in prison and learn the politics, that was the hardest part, and know that at no point could he let his tender side down. Like, he didn't say it like that, but at no point could he let his guard down. Like, he had to provide this image of this strong man so that nobody could break through to him. And in the beginning, that meant getting into some fights. Oh, I couldn't breathe. I was like, oh my gosh, my son would have died there, because I don't think he has those skills. And Joshua was like, oh yeah, he would have developed them, right? And so
That's right.
yeah. So anyway, but that's definitely something that I would recommend. And I've thought about it. I think we need to interview more recovering addicts and
I
share
think
their
so.
stories.
And Michelle, I'll tell you too, there was a lady that one of our moms that reached out to me last night and messaged me and said, my son's getting out. And I'm so proud of myself, because listening to us, she told the PO no. She said, no, my son cannot come to my house. No. And she
Oh.
started looking at some other places. And so it lets me know that we're doing good, that we are, because that was like the third time for him to be in prison and to be out. So she had been doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the things that we keep saying is, you keep doing that, and that's insanity. You have to do something different. And so I just encouraged her and to continue on, be steadfast, and to do that.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to be interviewing someone next week who was in prison, who is in Leavenworth. So
okay.
Oh,
If you
what
wanna
day
watch
and
that.
time? What day and time?
Tuesday on the evening, I think 5 o'clock Eastern time. Might
Yeah,
be 6, I don't remember off the top of my
let
head.
us know.
I
Let
will
us
be
know so
putting
we
a,
can
Well,
listen.
I will
can
put a
share-
mark your calendar thing on my author page with the time and date of it. So I am interviewing
So-
someone this Friday who is an ACEs educator, so.
Okay, so I can go there and share and live stream it into my group, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll do that
Good,
Tuesday
good.
and this week too, if
That's
for that other
next
ACES
week,
interview.
so, yeah.
Right, next week, Tuesday, yeah, because
Yay.
today's Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I gotta look at my screen to know what day it is. That's pretty scary. Okay, well, okay, God bless you guys, and thanks so much for being on with us today. And I will share in the notes sections of the podcast and YouTube on how you can get a hold of Danielle if you want to work on some of your trauma so you can heal further. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Take care. Thanks for coming, Lucretia.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Danielle.
Bye.